So it's November 12th, 2021, and the crafting changes are going to come out in about a week, guys. The news broke on the forums. The patch this week got delayed, and if the PTR goes well, it will be next week. Now, what day next week? I don't know. Will there be delays? Who knows? It'll come out anywhere from maybe Wednesday through Friday of next week, so that would be like the 16th through the 20th, maybe. So Tuesday through Saturday would be 16th through 20th, anywhere in that range, assuming there's no major delays. And they're going to nerf all crafting XP. Now, if you saw my other video, you'll know how much they're going to nerf everything by. And I will link that video in the description so you know what to level first. I'd highly recommend that so you know what you want to work on before the crafting nerfs, because they are getting nerfed. It's just different. Some professions are getting nerfed harder than others. But what this video is about is I'm going to show you the cheapest ways to level every single profession in this game so that you can get it done as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible before the patch goes live next week. Now, a lot of the things I'm going to show you are not going to be viable after the patch because the way they're going to scale everything after the patch. After the patch, the highest level thing's always going to be the best thing, whereas right now, there are certain tricks you can use in some of these professions to level cheaper. So let's start with weaponsmithing. Possibly the most expensive, one of the most expensive in the entire game. So, you start off, you're making long swords and things and all that, and then you make a steel, star metal, or calcum, right? Well, wrong, okay? Making actual weapons is not the cheapest way on most servers. Before I go any further, every server is going to be different on prices, but there are some trends that you will see frequently in many different servers. So I'm going to go through those and explain some price points for you. So, or calcum, star metal, steel, okay? Generally how it is right now, the lower you go, the better often, but it depends on what you pay, because sometimes people will sell the higher ones for cheaper than it costs to produce and things, and you really got to crunch those numbers. But there's one trick that I just use, and this is what I've used all the way to, I'm at 174 right now, and I've done all of that with weak honing stones. That's right, weak honing stones are the cheapest way to level weaponsmithing, hands down. You're going to use one death mote, one fire mote, and one stone block. Now, on my server, I can usually get stone blocks for 0.1 or less. I can get the death motes and the fire motes for 1 or less on most days, which then makes it so going from level 1 all the way to level 200 costs right around like 80,000 coins or so, and that's all it's going to cost. But if I were to make, say, just star metal as an example, I know you can't make star metal the whole way, but let's say star metal long swords, which are one of the most efficient for like the long sword, any of these weapons. You don't want the big weapons, if I remember right. You just want the smaller weapons, the ones that use less. So for star metal, right now, star metal is 7.5 a piece on my server. At those prices, if I could go from 1 to 200 making star metal, it would cost me, I think, around 120,000 coins, something like that, to get to max level. Now, there are changes in this. So if you go to your market and your fire motes and death motes are, say, 1.25 a piece on average, or above 1 on average, higher than 1. And if your star metal ingots are like 5 coins or less, then suddenly star metal, just making star metal swords, are going to be the way to go. If you see those types of prices, if the prices invert that hard. Now, generally on most servers I've ever seen, the price of the motes is always scaled pretty similar to that. So normally if I'm like on my 100k speedrun challenge, if I see star metal for 5 a piece on that server, generally fire and death motes are 0.5 also, which then makes them still more efficient. But those are some of the price points to think about. Definitely consider the weak honing stones if motes are cheap enough and the metals are expensive enough, or even if the metals are just a fair price, to be honest with you. So that is weaponsmithing. Now, armorsmithing, let's move on to armorsmithing. Now, armorsmithing, you are not going to be using the forge. You do not want to use metal. Metal's way more expensive than everything else in this game. So you're going to go over to the outfitter. And at the outfitter, there's a certain chain of things you're going to want to do. So when you first start, you're going to want to make linen shoes, because this uses more linen than leather. Linen is generally cheaper than leather, or it's about the same. Doesn't really matter. You could also make hand wraps, but I generally just go with the shoes. As soon as you hit level 50, though, you're going to swap over to sateen gloves. The reason you want to do sateen gloves, I don't even have any of the mats right now, is because it uses the same amount of cloth as it does leather. But you're using sateen, which is a tier 3 cloth, but for the leather, you can use tier 2 cloth, which is coarse leather, and in the metal, you can use iron ingots. So it's actually saving you mats compared to the amount of XP that you get, since you're not using the same tier of mats for all. And this applies also once you hit level 100. Once you hit level 100, you're going to want to make silk gloves, assuming you can get silk for cheap enough, or make silk for cheap enough on your server. Because you're going to do the same thing where you have a tier 4 cloth, but you only have to use a tier 1 leather, or tier 2 leather, and a tier 2 metal, which would be iron and coarse leather. So it starts to scale better and better the higher you go because of that, assuming you can get silk for a fair price. And the same thing will apply nowadays for infused silk. When I made a video a long time ago, it doesn't apply, you couldn't even buy infused silk, but infused silk is generally fairly priced on most servers now. So if you get infused silk for a good price, it's comparable to silk gloves. You have to crunch the numbers though, because it's only double the XP. So, you know, sometimes silk is not priced right to where infused silk's better. You just want to check your numbers on the market. Make sure that infused silk is only twice as expensive as silk or less, or otherwise you're just going to stick with silk. And you're just going to do that all the way up to level 200. Alternatively, if leather's super cheap, you can also do the same thing with the medium armor. So you can start with coarse leather stuff, coarse leather gloves or boots, and then go to rugged leather gloves, and then layered leather gloves, and possibly infused leather gloves, assuming whatever's cheaper. Is leather cheaper or is cloth cheaper on your server? And that's really all that determines that. That's it for armoring. That's literally the best way. I've gone through everything, unless you have a bunch of materials like jade collars and things to burn. But nowadays, they're not so free to get after I showed everyone how to buy them. So that's going to be that for armoring. It kind of sucks. Armoring's expensive, but that's the way you got to do it if you want to try to hit level 200 before this patch goes live next week. And now let's move on to the next one. So let's take a look at Jewelcrafting. Now, Jewelcrafting is pretty simple. I can get through this one real fast. So Jewelcrafting, there's a few different ways you're going to go about this. Generally, if you're going to make the jewelry, you're going to use silver ingots no matter what to save money. Silver ingots are going to be the cheapest, unless you see gold ingots for cheaper. Sometimes you'll see gold ingots or platinum ingots for cheaper on some servers. But you're just going to go with the cheapest applicable metal, which will be silver, gold, or platinum. Generally silver, but sometimes just the other's cheaper. And you're going to make flawed jewelry. You're just going to make crazy amounts of flawed jewelry, and then once you get high enough, level 50, you're going to make the basic jewelry, just whatever, amulets, or I think you unlock rings for then. And then you're not going any higher than that. Unless you happen to have the gems anyway for mining or something, then you can go ahead and bang out some brilliant ones or pristine. But if you are buying them, the price points on most servers, you can go into the auction house and you can buy these medium ones for like 5 a piece, 4 a piece, stuff like that. Although sometimes you see brilliant for that cheap too, but the catch is the moat. And the moat makes it like almost not worth it a lot of the time because it's only double the XP. It's less than double the XP to go from a, say, Jasper to a brilliant Jasper. So because of the moats, generally these medium amulets are the best place to go. Now at the same time, you just bang out whatever jewelry you can. But if you're trying to do the absolute cheapest, you're just going to want to buy these greens to save on moats. And then you're going to bang these out instead. And it's probably the most efficient way. There's one other option though. And that is if you see jewelry, or not jewelry, gems for cheap enough in the auction, once you hit a certain price point in the auction, it's better to just turn them into gemstone dust just so you don't have to use the moat. Now, it's going to give you more than 3 times less. So that was confusing. Basically, like 3.4 something times less experience per gem to turn it into gemstone dust. It gives you 504 instead of 600, and it uses 3. But you don't have to use any moats. And in case of green ones, you have to use wisps. So say for this one, instead of using, I think it was it 3 wisps or 2 wisps? I haven't done it in so long, I don't remember. But it's a lot of wisps. Or you could just convert them into gemstone dust. So if you get, say, normal ambers or brilliant ambers or something for 2 coins or 1 coin or 3 coins or something on the trading post, then you can just go ahead and make gemstone dust, and it'll actually save you money over the moats. But it's only if you're getting them for cheap enough that it makes sense. Alright, so that's it for Jewelcrafting. That's some general ideas for you on how that one works. The fastest ways, cheapest ways to do those ones. Just, again, I can't give you exact things because it's going to depend on the price of these items on your server, and every server is wildly different than the others on prices. So there's no guarantee. And even day by day. On my day, my server, some days I'll see crazy stuff, sometimes I won't. Sometimes the prices change over the course of a week. That's market. So you got to use your best judgment on what's the cheapest here. But I'm giving you the ones that are generally the cheapest. You got to look at the prices. Let's look at cooking now. So cooking right now is pretty straightforward, and it should be pretty straightforward afterwards. You just make a light ration or travel ration, then energizing light, you make a light ration or energizing light, and then travel or energizing travel. Basically, level 1. As soon as you make level 2, you go ahead and try to buy those materials on the market. Nowadays, food is almost free for a lot of foods on the market. Then you're going to go to this one. You're going to make either energizing light or light meal. You're going to make them. You're just going to throw them on the ground afterwards. You're going to buy whatever materials. So the way this works, if you're not familiar, once you get, say, tier 3, you need 1 tier 3 ingredient. So in this case, say, blueberries. They're insanely cheap normally. Then after that, it's literally just what can you get for free. So on the market, I can probably find pork for free most of the time. I can find, what was it, red meat is generally pretty cheap nowadays. Now that the servers have been out for like a month and a half or whatever. And so then you're just going to use whatever the cheapest stuff you can buy in that order. So you'd buy one thing that's like no matter what a certain tier. After that is literally what is the cheapest thing, and you need unique ones. You need 2 different unique ones. Then you get to tier 4, you do the same thing. But you're going to get tier 4 ingredient, which is where things get a little bit confusing. There's like broccoli is one. And you're just going to have to look through the list and make sure to look at the tier list of the foods that you go through and to see where it's the cheapest tier 4 if you're going to go tier 4. Now, if you can't get tier 4 for cheap enough, it might end up being better just go ahead and make the tier 3s and stick to tier 3s. But if you can find any kind of tier 4 for cheap enough, you buy a bunch of tier 4, and then you buy a bunch of throwaway ones, which would be like pork, red meat, and I don't even know, corn or something. Corn's often expensive, but maybe not. Oh, blueberries. You can start using your blueberries here since you're not using for tier 3 anymore. You buy blueberries, pork, and red meat, for example, if those are the cheap ones on your server. On some servers, I've seen fish fillets being the cheapest, actually, believe it or not. Then you get to hearty meals. Also, you'll need a tier 5 kitchen, by the way, to make hearty meals, and tier 4 for this if you're not familiar with how any of this stuff works. Hearty meals. So you're going to need a tier 5, which generally the best ones that I see are pork belly, tomato, and coconut. Pork belly, not very often, but sometimes. Coconut, I used to see a lot, but not so much anymore. And then tomatoes, also another one I see a lot. But there may be others. You just got to list by price first and go next page, next page, next page until you see a tier 5 food that's really cheap. And then whatever tier 5 food you can get a hold of, you're going to then use your throwaway ingredients, which would be pork, red meat, for example, blueberries, and then you need a seasoning, which before 1.05, you're going to want to use honey, which I don't even have available right here. After 1.06 comes out, though, you're not going to want honey anymore because honey is going to probably be really expensive afterwards since they're nerfing the hell out of it from drops. But you have to use some kind of spice that you get from herbs or honey. And those are the 2 different choices for this. So say cinnamon, for example, that's not cheap. Well, normally one of these green ones is usually pretty cheap, like mint or thyme or something. Sometimes I'll see these for like half a coin each. And then hearty meals, they give double the XP of the tier 4. So unless you're going to do this for relatively cheap, then it's better to stick to tier 4 or tier 3 and just grind it out. But if you can get the tier 5 for cheap enough and get the seasoning for cheap enough, then the tier 5 is the way to go, and you'll be done in no time. Now, after the patch, it's going to take, I think, 1.2 times more materials to get to the end game, level 200 cooking on average, or something like that. It's going to be hell. Cooking's one you definitely want to level. So that's it for cooking. We're getting through it, all right? We're getting through it. Next up, we have engineering, and I will go to furnishing last. Hold on. No, I won't go to furnishing last. I'm going to engineer, furnishing, Arcana. All right, so for engineering, there are a few options with engineering. Now, you can make wood bows, for example, or spears over at the forge, but they're both literally identical. You can also make wooden fishing poles, because wood is way cheaper than metal. But there's also another one, if you can get them for cheap enough, which is, if I can remember where the heck it is in all this stuff now that I've unlocked so much. Oh, right here, gunpowder. If you can get charcoal, flint, and saltpeter cheap enough, gunpowder gives 100 engineering XP each. And now the server's been out for so long, sometimes if you watch the market religiously, sometimes you'll see flint for like 0.2, and saltpeter for like 0.2, and charcoal for like 0.1. It happens, depending on your server, go one way. It depends on your server. Prices, and it depends on the day. For these ones, prices vary pretty wildly for these 3 ingredients. So if you see these ingredients for cheap enough, I don't really have the price point offhand, and you guys can crunch out some numbers if you want, but if you see these things hella cheap, it's 100 engineering XP for 2 flint, 1 saltpeter, 5 charcoal. So that ends up being really, really cheap in the beginning. But it turns into a freaking grind eventually where there's no way the market's going to supply enough for you once you get to higher levels and you need to craft like 10,000 of these or something. And if you can't get enough of these for cheap enough, then the other options are, some people think proficiency boosters. Generally, these are not as good as just using wood once you get to tier 1, once you get to level 100. If you're lower level, if you can't do the gunpowder, you could look at these. If you're going to do any of these proficiency boosters, just do the weak one. Do not do the higher level ones. It gets less and less efficient on materials to XP the higher you go. So 36 for 1 and 1. Wisps take 5 motes. So this is 10 motes, and we don't even get 3 times more XP. So it's literally significantly less efficient, and terribly inefficient once you get to here. Once you get the soul motes free from the soul quintessences free from deer poop. Once you get to 100, things change a little bit. You can always go for wordwood bows and wordwood spears and wordwood fishing poles, because oftentimes on a lot of servers, I'll see wordwood planks going really cheap. On my server, they vary, but sometimes they'll dip as low as 2 coins a piece. And so when I see them 2 coins a piece, I just buy them up and I convert them into wordwood fishing poles. And just like with the armoring, you can just use a crappy tier 1 leather and linen, use coarse leather and linen, and then also use a tier 4 mat. So being this higher mat, is basically these materials are borderline free, relatively speaking, and then use 14 times 2, 28. If you get for 2, it's 28 coins plus all this, like 30 coins, 4,425 XP. It's pretty decent. And then once you get to ironwood, at least on my server, I never see the prices being worth it for ironwood. I actually am stuck at wordwood. If I do ironwood, it generally costs me like 2.5 or 2.2 times more. But this is something you gotta check your prices on, because it's gonna use one more plank on average of 14 to 15, but it only gives slightly more than double the XP. So if you see ironwood for, say, if you're buying wordwood occasionally at 2 to 3 coins, that means you've got to see ironwood at like 5 to 6 coins to really be worth it, all the way up to 7 coins maybe. But on my server, they're always 8 plus. I never see ironwood for less than 8. So, but I see wordwood way cheaper. So that's why it really depends on the price points when doing these ones. But that's what you're going to be looking for. Wordwood's generally a good one. You could try lumber, but generally the way my server always scales, lumber's not worth it. But again, this is server to server. You might see lumber on your server for 0.5 and then wordwood for 2.5. And if that's the case, then crap, go with lumber. You know what I mean? It's 540 versus 1425. So, but generally these woods are the way to go, and it's just gonna be what's the cheapest wood you can get, and then the highest tier that you can go in order to save the other mats. So that, and then also, oh, I forgot one more thing. You can also try to make cartridges and arrows. Now, these don't use very many ingots and stuff, especially once you get to orichalcum. Once you get to orichalcum, it's only 1 ingot and then 3 infused silk or 2 ironwood planks. And these other ones you can just buy for free on the trading post. You don't have to make them. And then you can actually go try to sell these and get some of your money back, or maybe even make money in order to get it. So once you get to like 100, or especially 150, you can attempt to do this. Now, you're going to get undercut like hell because everyone else is trying to do this too. But you might be able to do this for the cheapest if you can actually get these to sell. And they will sell. People do buy these, by the way. It's just a matter of there's so many other people doing it that the undercuts are absolute hell. You get undercut constantly. I would list for 1 day. I would check it multiple times a day, pull the listing and undercut, and just try to get as much money back as you can. And if you can do that, this will hands down be the cheapest way to go from 150 to 200 engineering. So there's all your options for engineering. Hopefully that helps. And I know I'm not being super specific on some of this stuff, but again, it's because every price is different on every server, guys. I can't tell you this is no matter what right, or I'll be leading you wrong, because on your server it could be totally different and you're just, throwing money away. So let's take a look at furnishing. Now, furnishing is hell, but don't worry about furnishing. It's not changing between 1.05 and 1.06. Furnishing is the only profession, crafting profession, that is completely untouched by the change. So I would put furnishing off until later and do the other ones first if you're trying to rush these things before the patch comes out, November 17th or 18th, whenever it's going to come out, unless it gets delayed. But if you are going to level, well, if you're going to level this profession, I would say you just want to get to old straw cot. Now, you can buy this recipe on the auction. It'll literally just be called cot, C-O-T. It'll be called schematic : space cot. And if you can get a hold of one of those schematics, that's the way to go for the beginning. Actually, it's the way to go probably the whole way, but nobody can tolerate doing it. So it uses 1 linen, 1 feather, and 2 maple stain. So you're going to make maple stain, which you'll have to either buy or you'll have to get furnishing to 50 first. If you need furnishing to 50 and you don't have it and you want to do it all yourself, you can make round sunny rugs, you can make wicker baskets, and if you want to burn metal, I forget which one was the best metal one, any of these, but they all suck, honestly. Really, if you want 50 on your own, you're going to want to go with the round sunny rug or the wicker basket. I might be forgetting something, but I think that was all. Then you can make maple stain. Again, you just buy it. And you use weak solvent for this and 4 oil. Or you just buy it. And then you're going to make these straw cots. Now, the reason these are so good is when you salvage the straw cots, you get the 1 linen back. So in order to make a straw cot, you use 1 feather and 2 maple stain, and that's it. And it gives 24 furnishing. So you're going to make like 100 at a time. You're going to go to your inventory, you're going to go salvage, click E, salvage, click E, salvage, click E, and go through and salvage them all, and it's going to be hell because there's no salvage all button in 1.05. And then you're done. And then you go back and you make another 100, and you go back and you just keep doing that until you feel like you're going to die on the inside, okay? And you do that all the way until you hit level 200 if you want. And it's absolute hell, and it'll take like 8 hours of clicking, assuming you even have the mats. Now, other ways you can do it that are slightly less efficient, but way more chill on the mind, is you can make oak stain, which is potent solvent and oil, And then once you get high enough furnishing, you're just going to make mahogany stain. Now, in order to do this, you're probably going to want to put buy orders for the pure solvent to try to save some money and make this more efficient. Same for the oil. If there's any space left on the oil buy orders, on my server, the buy and sell orders are almost matched, so there's not even room for me to put a buy order. So I just buy whatever's on the market and say, screw it. But you should be able, this is pretty much one of the cheapest ways. And then also, there's one other option, and that option is, wherever it is, incense. So if you can get cinnamon for cheap, incense completely hinges on the cinnamon. If you can get cinnamon for cheap, then you can make these strong incenses for 384 a piece. And those are actually decent XP, and I think there's ones you can just do the bar and hit craft. You don't have to click there and salvage things and all that. But you're going to want to do the highest one possible to save on your cinnamon, because generally cinnamon's going to be reasonably expensive compared to some of the other mats, although maybe wordwood, whatever. And then really you're in heaven once you hit 170 furnishing. Me personally, I'm saving all my cinnamon until I hit 170 furnishing, and then I'm just going to use ironwood planks and cinnamon and hyssop and charcoal to get the last levels. Even though it's less efficient than the cots, I just can't stand to salvage literally like 15,000 cots or something. It's just not worth the time. It's going to take me hours of salvaging cots, and I'm still going to be salvaging cots when I get the materials, but this is the other option, is the powerful incense, and it'll be pretty simple if you can just get the cinnamon and the planks. And it's a decent XP conversion per cost, as long as your ironwood planks and cinnamon aren't insanely overpriced. Now, I'm sure there's servers out there, I'm sure I'll see it in the comments, there's servers out there where you're going to see cinnamon for like 10 coins plus per piece, and if that's the case, then this may not be worth it. You may need to crunch some numbers on your own, because, again, every server is different, so I can't give you exact numbers that work no matter what, because, you know, it's not going to apply to every server. So those are the furniture ways. Furniture just kind of sucks, but that's how you're going to do it if you're going to try to do furniture. And then let's take a look at Arcana now. So Arcana, this one right now, at least before the patch, is honestly pretty easy to level. It's pretty affordable to level if you know what you're doing. Now, you can always start with Hyssop, or I think it was Bulrush Cob, lets you make weak health potions. Then once you get higher, you can see if you can buy cheap stuff on the auction. But generally, it goes like this. This is generally most servers, this is how you're going to do it. You're going to use Bulrush Cob for, I think it was Bulrush Cob works for this. You can generally buy it for real cheap, or you buy the Hyssop, whatever's cheaper. Use it with water. Do that to get your Arcana up some. And then once you get higher level, you're going to start like just 5, 10, 15, or whatever. You can start going to weapon coatings and resistance consumables. Now, very often, you can go and you can find these protective reagents on the auction house or trading post for pretty cheap. So you just go to the auction house and you go use the categories, go to potion reagents, go to protective reagents, and then scroll by price first and see if there's any protective reagents that make sense, and do the same for offense. If you see them cheap enough, you can buy them and you can convert them. The real difference, though, is the problem is you need one moat for each one, which is why Bulrush Cob's generally going to be better all the way until you get to these level 50 ones. And then just for the sake, even that Bulrush Cob might still be pretty good, but it's just a matter of getting enough of it for cheap. Same for Hyssop, use that instead. But once you get to these, if you can find some of these for cheap enough, you know, if you find a bunch of fungal spores for 1 coin a piece, you can use the basic wisps. I don't have any available in this one. Maybe this one. No, I don't have any. Of course, I don't have any wisps to show you, but you don't have to use wisps. You can just use moats. I just don't have any moats in my inventory right now or in my storage for this. But yeah, you want to just use normal moats. And then you use your tier 3 one, you're going to get 90 XP. You're going to eventually then, you're going to be hoping that you can find tier 4 reagents, and then use those with just basic life and basic spirit moats, like soul moat, and do those. Those are options. And these all of this, with Arcana, it really all depends on paying attention to the prices and doing what's cheapest. Now, I have another way in a second to show you, but let me go through this first. Then also for all these, if you look through and you just got to go to that trading post and you got to search potion reagents, go by price first and see if there's any good deals. If there's good deals, you snatch them up and you use moats with them and you level up. That's generally how it's going to go, all the way until you get to infused health potions. Once you get to infused health potions, you can generally, on most servers, you can just buy Azoth water, use an earth reagent, which would be petal cap or earth moat, and then spirit would be bumble blossom or soul moat. And then you're just going to create a bunch of infused health potions, and you're just going to sell them back to the market to try to recoup your losses. And generally, you can go from 150 to 200 while making a little bit of money or losing a little bit of money, but just getting it done. And it's really, really cheap at that point. The real issue with this whole profession is how do you get to 150? Now, the same principle does apply, though, for powerful health, too. Sometimes on some servers, you can make powerful health and sell them. They don't sell as easily, but you can, if the prices are right, you could try making powerful health, powerful regen, strong health, but these ones are a little bit harder. Generally, on a lot of servers, you'll see, you know, gleaming lodestone and stuff at like 15 a piece and the potions at 5, so you just got to look at your prices. Every server is different. Some servers are great deals, some there's not. Now, the other option is to go down here to Wisps, Essence, and Quintessence. So what you can do is you can buy motes, and then you can make Wisps, or Essence, or Quintessence, and then try to sell it back for whatever you can to try to get your money back. Now, on some servers, you can make a little bit of money doing this. It's a very undercut-heavy market, though, so be prepared to get undercut constantly. But you could do this to try to level Arcana affordably, depending on how many other scalpers there are in the market trying to make money off Wisps and Essence, and just what the competition's like on this. Now, if there's not a lot of competition on your server, and there's enough people buying and selling things, you can hopefully make these, convert these, sell them back, and lose only a little bit of money along the way, or lose a lot, or gain a little bit of money along the way. It just depends. Now, in some cases, it's not worth it, so check your prices before you do this, because I've seen, every now and then I'll see it where it's like life wisps or life motes are 0.5, and life wisps are 1 coin a piece, and it's like, okay, you will lose some hardcore money at that because it takes 5 life motes. So, you know, you've got to check your numbers on that, but if you can get it to where you're only losing a little bit, you could also get a decent amount of Arcana XP converting these. It's not the greatest, but it's definitely an option. It's definitely something you just save some money doing it. But there you have it. Those are the most affordable ways to level up your crafting professions in 1.05 before 1.06 goes live, which will be next week. Now, I had to make the video because I had some videos already on, you know, ultimate guides for these professions, but I posted those like 4 days after the game launched, and everything is so different now that the economies have stabilized. Like back on my old videos, some of the things that I just showed you, you literally could not buy these things. Wordwood planks literally didn't exist when I made my old videos. So this video is like an updated version, and I'll have to make another updated version after 1.06 comes out. So sometime after the patch, I'll make another one of what is the most efficient way on your money, on your wallet, to level up each of these professions on 1.06 when everything's different. So make sure you subscribe for that if you want to know that, in case you don't make it to 200 before the patch goes out. I'm going to make a video showing you the most efficient way for each profession later. Also, consider subscribing to this YouTube for other reasons. I post news, I post guides, I post helpful information. I let you know about balance updates. I tell you guys what's going on if there's something crazy going on, like when the trading post shut down. So it's just another reason to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. But that's it. I know this was a lengthy video, but I wanted to explain all the ins and outs of every reason why or why not to do something. I don't want to just say, just do this, and then you go to your server and you do it, and you're actually throwing all your money away because on your server it does not make sense. So hopefully now you can go back through this video to whatever one you want to see, and, you know, look at it a few times, go look at your prices, figure out what makes sense on your server, and then level up each of your crafting professions to 200, or as many as you can get, before 1.06 goes live next week, and save some serious coins while doing it.